Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. I'm Rochelle. I'll be hosting today. And who do I have with me?
I'm Heather. Glad to be here today.
Hi Heather.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Joe.
Hi Joe.
Nice to be here.
Hello, and I'm Doug.
Hello.
What's up, everybody?
What's
Doug.
up?
What's up?
Thank you all for being here on this lovely fall morning.
I know, it
beautiful
is a
morning.
good fall morning.
Yeah, it's really nice outside. I've seen all the fall colors in the office already.
I know.
In
So
the
good.
mood. Yes. So how was everyone's weekend?
My weekend was good. Yeah,
did
I'm
you do
trying to
anything
think
fun?
I'm trying to think of what I did. Friday, I've been trying to get myself ready for the free market.
Nice.
So I've now pulled down all of my fall clothing. It's in bins because I want to get my fall clothes because I think we're finally in fall.
Yes.
I think it's supposed to be a little warm this week, but I think we're getting there. So then I can get rid of all my summer stuff. So that is what I wanted to do this weekend, but I have not been successful in completing that. And I'm trying to figure out why, but I don't know. I can't remember. But apparently I was too busy to do that.
Are you going to be a vendor?
Yeah.
At the, free
Yeah.
market? Nice.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I love to clean out stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like to have too much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love I love this idea of having a free market in the fall and in the spring because then you
Yes.
can do it twice, do a clean out twice. Yeah.
Double purging.
Yes. Double purging.
Doesn't get
I say
better.
we do one every season.
I
I'm
agree.
all about it.
I have a question for you, Heather.
Yeah.
Have you done Spinkin's dinner yet?
Yes.
I really
we did
want
the
to.
family friends one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd need to do
That's
it.
really cool.
It drops tonight.
Oh, yeah. The registration
Yep.
for it. It's like in November. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For the
that's
new
cool.
listeners, who in the world is
Yeah.
Spinkin?
Yes.
Spinkin?
Yeah.
Yes, they're my kids.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Spencer and Kendra.
Yeah, they do a supper club.
Oh,
That's
supper
awesome.
club.
So they're dropping their November one registrations drops tonight that you can
Very
register
cool.
for.
It's really cool because that like fits their talents and like hobbies.
Yeah.
Like they're always cooking together and using that as time together and stuff. They post all the things that they
Yeah.
make and stuff. So
Oh,
yeah,
fun.
that's cool. Yeah,
What,
that's cool.
what is a supper club? So you just...
Well, for them, this is great.
So many
They're gonna
questions.
love
Yeah,
it.
they're gonna love the plug.
Joe hits us with like such a unique, like
Actually,
inside
I should get a
question.
10% cut for this.
For them, it's people do it kind of all over the place, but it's an intimate dinner situation where it's a curated menu. And you can, you pay for this curated menu dining experience.
4 courses.
Oh, so they send you the
Wow.
food and you cook it, kind of thing?
No, you go to the location.
Oh.
So you go whatever the location is, and it's presented to you. So it depends on the supper club.
Yeah.
But for them, it's at their location. They provide the menu. But it's a intimate situation.
It looks
That's
really
awesome.
cool.
That sounds
cool.
really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
pretty awesome.
Thanks for going into
Yeah.
that for me. What else? What did you guys do this weekend?
I had a busy weekend. We went to Howl-O-Scream Friday
Oh,
night.
cool.
Yeah. We do. Busch Gardens is amazing for the kids. Like they're in this perfect age where all summer it's a nice spot to have the passes. Like not like it's cheap now. You don't have to pay to get in and all that. So we do Busch Gardens quite a bit, but we haven't done Howl-O-Scream because they're not of age for that. So
Yeah.
I'm not of age for that. That
Sounds spooky.
terrifies me.
Listen, that-
I can't do it.
That part of it was not very scary. I
It
think
wasn't,
they just
dude.
yeah.
What?
It's not like when we were kids. I think they were
Yeah.
allowed to do much more. Like back when we were kids, going through it, like in high school and stuff, they could grab you and like really scare you.
Yeah, they could like
And now it
punch
just
you.
it feels like
They couldn't punch you.
Yeah, we
You can't tell lies.
we
on
went
the
a couple weeks
podcast,
ago.
Doug.
It felt like spiritual punches, like enemies all over the place. We went a couple weeks ago too, man, and it wasn't all that scary. I don't
Yeah,
know
it
if it's just
wasn't.
because I'm older now, I assume.
Yeah, but it was really cool. I took some like Dramamine because I get bad motion sickness, and
I thought you meant
Dramamine.
Dramamine helped with the spookiness.
Oh no! And
Is there a medicine that's like, things aren't this spooky anymore?
so
This is
motion
great.
sickness? Yeah. So, and I can't even ride like swings without
Yeah,
getting motion
same.
sickness. So I thought, man, my wife and I used to go to Busch Gardens when we were dating all the time and rode all the rides. I was like, I just want to do that again, at least a little bit. And it helped. I rode one roller coaster and the swings.
Nice.
Very
And then I was done.
What roller
swings.
coaster did you ride?
The Invader, the wooden
Oh,
one.
yeah.
So it's not too
yeah.
bad. Yeah, but it was so fun. Like we broke away from the group. We had a great time all night, but broke away from the group and just us had like an hour together. It was fun.
The swings, is that the one that spins around really fast? Swings?
No, I hate that ride.
Okay.
The swings that like go up and you're just kind of casually just going
Okay.
around.
Yeah.
The swings, man.
No, I
It's
know.
like any
There's a bunch
amusement
of
park.
like
You're
when you
thinking
say
the Scrambler. That thing is awful.
I don't know what I'm thinking,
Okay.
but like there's one ride where it takes you up and it's like a big swing, but it takes you all the way back
Oh,
and
yeah.
then swings all the way
No.
forward.
You're thinking of like the ship thing.
Oh no,
no.
it's not that one. It's like a new one.
I'm not doing
and it's
that.
really fun, but it's terrifying.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
It's like right when you first get in the park. I
Doug
forgot
doesn't
what
know
it's
what
called.
he's thinking about. He thinks he's getting punched.
Yeah,
Yeah.
punch
When he
Spiritual
goes
punches.
to when he goes to Busch Gardens. We
Somebody
can't
was
trust what
punching
this
me,
guy's
okay?
saying right now.
Yeah, and then other than that, Sunday I wasn't here yesterday, but I got to catch up on YouTube. I heard it was a great day.
I don't tell us why you weren't here.
Yeah,
Joey.
I got invited to my hometown church to give a message for their laity Sunday. So it's more of like a guest speaker is how we would
Yeah.
relate to that. And so I wrote a message on the prodigal son. I love that story.
Yeah.
I love that story. But I took a unique spin. I got some insight from Pastor Jamie and Doug, helped me out with it quite a bit, and gave a perspective from the older brother in the situation rather than the younger brother. So relatable, right? Like how we can steer far from Jesus and how eager he is to welcome us back even when we fall short. But the older brother in that story is also very relatable as Christians. Like we see we're doing, like even when we're doing good works in the name of Jesus, like we see other people fall short and then they get celebrated. Like sometimes that can make us feel a certain way, and to work through those emotions and celebrate with them is also a very good
Yeah.
thing
cool.
to do.
Yeah.
That's
It was
a great
cool.
spin
It was
on
good.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, very
It was
cool.
a good Sunday.
What about you, Doug?
So we had a busy weekend as well. We went out for some birthday things. I turned 41 last week.
Yeah.
So it was super fun. So we went out for that. But talking about cooking, I cooked some potato soup for the first time.
Nice.
And it was really good. I followed the recipe really closely, and the recipe said to cut up the potatoes in 1-inch cubes, and that was not good. That was not correct. It should have been much smaller. I cooked that thing all day in a slow cooker, and I took a bite in the potatoes, and they were crunchy.
Crunchy.
So I was like, I gotta cook it much longer. So we ate a very late dinner that night.
Yeah.
So you know what this reminds me of, Doug? When for the staff cook-off, your team made an apple.
Oh gosh,
dish.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that's right. Should we share that story? Do we have time? A quick
nothing
story.
but
So yeah, we had this really fun staff outing, and we always do these team building games, and we wanted to create a meal, and everybody had a different course of the meal, and my team had dessert. And we had to create this weird apple tart, if I remember correctly. It was like an apple tart pastry thing. And we're following, and we had to like scale it up. That was the hard part. We had to scale it up because you're not cooking it for 4 people. You're cooking it for like, how many
It's like
people are there?
16 or something.
16 people. So we're doing math, like a teaspoon. What is a teaspoon anyway? That times whatever. Like, how do you do that math, right? And it wasn't as easy. It was like 4 of these and 7 of those. So we're reading the instructions, and we completely left out an ingredient. I think it was
Like cinnamon or
cinnamon or something.
Or,
So it was really tart. I bit into it, and I was like, it's okay.
and they ended up
it was edible, but it
they
was
ended
not.
up buying like a massive amount of apples.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like this
It was very funny.
We had like apple dessert that like everyone could have brought home an entire pie.
Yeah. And nobody wanted it.
But nobody wanted it because
And
it
I
was disgusting.
and like, I'll eat anything. So I'm eating. I'm like, no, this is good, guys. Y'all should try it. And everybody's trying it. They're like, yeah, It's something.
Tastes like feet.
Yeah. So like the ingredients, if it says to add something, like do what it says. It's really important.
Oh man.
Oh, man, very cool.
But the potato soup was amazing. Aside from the potatoes,
Once it got done.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And I made it spicy, but not too spicy. It was very good.
Nice.
Fun. Yeah. Okay.
Love it.
Chef Doug over
Yeah.
there.
What'd you do, Shell?
So this weekend, Friday, I got to help out my sister. She had a surgery, and so I got to take care of her. And I think I don't know, I could have been a nurse.
Caregiver,
If
yeah.
I love doing it.
I believe that about you.
It's really fun, yeah. And, just trying to meet her needs, but also, sad sometimes it takes something like this, but it's really nice to be able to spend that time with her and my mom too, because she was staying at my mom's place, and I got to go through a bunch of old photo albums. So I got
That's so
fresh
fun.
photos of baby Rochelle, and I'm amazed at how much I really do look like my kids. I
Yeah.
can see it when I look at my kid pictures. I'm like, what a phenomenon.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
how do they look like me? But that was really fun. And then Saturday and Sunday, Jerry and I took on our first home project. And we took all of the carpet off of the stairs because it was just like shoddily put together and it was dangerous. The boys were like getting cut up on like exposed staples and things like that. So we took it all off. And then, we got into it and we're like, this is going to take way longer than we expected. But it has been such a fun project working on it together. We've just been putting on Motown and taking out staples and nails. And we finally got it ready to sand this evening. So, Joe let us borrow some tools. So that was really
Nice.
helpful. And we have no idea what we're doing. Neither of us are skilled in that area. We've just like Googled it every step of the way.
Yeah.
So, that
Google
is-
and YouTube.
Google
Best
and
friends
YouTube.
to
Yes.
DIY projects.
The more you do it, the
Yeah.
easier it'll be.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
It's been really fun getting some new steps. All right, so we are in a Bible reading plan this year. It has been great. We're in John 4 and 5 this week. So I'd love to know if you guys have gotten to the reading or what you read last week. What are some things that have stuck out to you as we dig into scripture together?
John chapter 4 is like my favorite.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was good.
I'm pulling it up
Yeah.
right now. So if someone else wants to talk while I pull
Yeah,
it up,
okay.
it's totally fine.
I pulled out, I think this was from chapter 5, because on our app, it doesn't break out the chapters. So I think I always get confused. I think, oh, wow, chapter 4 is pretty long. Oh, no, that was 4 and 5. But I think this was chapter 5, verse 15. Jesus had just healed the invalid man. So he's valid, I think he said 38 years, 30-something years. He was there and nobody was helping him. He couldn't get help. And he told him to pick up his mat and walk. And so he then gives him like kind of a warning. He says, see, you are all well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. And I dug into that a little bit because I thought, man, that kind of might fit this stereotype of Christianity, where just kind of, a little bit of Bible thumping, like don't go sin anymore or else sort of thing. And that's not really what that was at all. Number one, Jesus is warning this man because he had been sitting there and not really even able to be fully tempted by sin because of his status. And so, okay, now you're up and you're able now to see more of this world, and you will be tempted by sin more now than you ever have been, or at least for the last 30-something years. But then I think it was also a good reminder, and I pulled a verse here from Matthew. It says, do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. And I think it was, so him saying that and giving that warning, I think, was more spiritual than it was physical. And I think we get into that mindset sometimes that we're worried about, don't sin again or else what? It's something physically is going to happen to me. No, like the spiritual consequences are much worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I love that passage because I think it shows the compassion that Jesus had. I think you're right. We can read that almost like somebody yelling at us, like, stop sinning. But I read it more so like from a compassionate sense, as like a loving father, like, I care about you and I want what's best for you. So like live your life more purposefully in this way, and you'll experience like true joy in that sense.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love John 4, just the whole part with Jesus and the woman at the well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like one of my favorite stories in scripture, and for a lot of reasons, but one of them just being that like Jesus always goes to the person who he's not supposed to be talking with. I just love that. And what I loved about reading this passage today, just this week, just with the message from Sunday, I love reading how, he goes to this woman that he's not supposed to be talking to. It's like culturally not appropriate. And he meets her where she's at. He's able to have this conversation with her. She's shocked that he will like even see her. And then he sees her beyond what she thinks he's going to know about her. And then she takes that conversation and she goes and tells people like, he's seen me. And then through that conversation, she draws people to Jesus. So like, I just love that. Because that's like how we spread the news about Jesus. Like we have an encounter with Jesus. He sees all of our mess and all of the chaos that's going around in our lives. He meets us in our need and restores our relationship with him. And then we're able to tell other people about him. Like that's just like the gospel story, told over and over again. And that's how the gospel story gets told. And I love it. It's like all in this like one little, it's within like 30 verses. It's like the picture of who Jesus is. And it's one of my favorite passages. So
Yeah,
cool.
I love that. What a thread that really resonated with me through that too was that intimacy factor. So that idea that he's like, oh no, girl, I know you, right? I know all your business, and I love like how that was the thing that the verses highlight that she used to evangelize. Was like, he knew me. And then I saw that throughout the rest of it because I never thought about the fact that the man who was invalid, he had all these excuses. And it was like Jesus was like, oh, I know what you need to hear to take your bed and walk. And I just think that that's so cool how when we can just recognize that Jesus knows us in the ways that we can't even admit that is a part of us. He knows it, and he's still coming after us. He's still like, I'm still here to have this conversation with you.
Right.
And when we get those opportunities to share that with others, how it draws them in, because it's like, we all want to be known. We want to be seen for who we are. And that's exactly what he does with us. And I saw that throughout these people that he has encounters with in this passage. So,
cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
So-
when I was
sorry. No, go ahead.
When I was reading it this morning too, I was reading it with your big idea in mind, that Jesus holds all things together. And like that's such a good example of that too. Like this lady has all of these really difficult things happening in her world, and it would have felt very chaotic. Like when you asked yesterday, like how many of you feel, and I forgot the way you worded it, but how many of you feel like chaos in your lives? And I was like, oh yeah, totally. Yeah, a lot. And this lady probably would have felt that way. And Jesus kind of brings hope, and in doing that brings order. And he shows her like, yeah, you're wondering about this God, like you don't even know the God that you're worshiping. We know him, but you don't know him. And soon you'll be able to worship him, not on this mountain or in Jerusalem, but in spirit and in truth. And that would have brought such a sense of peace and hopefully comfort, but order. Like she's could you imagine trying to worship God and you don't know?
Yeah.
And you're just like worshiping the best you can, but like with no structure, no like disciplines, just like, man, I hope I'm doing it right.
Right.
I hope when I get to the end, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then Jesus is like, no, this is what it's going to look like. And it's going to be so much better for you. And he brings that order to her life. And that's really cool.
Yes.
And that brings joy. And she goes and tells everybody.
Exactly.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And then he stays there for 2 more days too. Like even that is like he's like planning to just pass through. Like they're just kind of going through, but she goes and tells more people, and then they stay, and like just the whole thing is just so cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That was a great segue into what happened yesterday. So we are in our series Divided We Stand, and Heather was up and did an amazing job with the Stump speech. I don't know why I feel like I have to have a jingle for everything. I love it. The Stump speech. So really set the stage for us by kicking it off with a fun scene from a throwback.
Yes.
I mean,
Saved by the Bell.
yeah.
Yes, yeah. We have the
so
classic. Yes,
It was
classic.
so good.
Race for class president with Zach and Jesse. So, before we get real deep into it, who do you think won? Like, who were you drawn to with their stump speech? Who had the better stump speech?
Zach.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, it's like obvious, right? But I was thinking about it, so Zach, in that sense, he's a very good politician. He's telling the people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
He's very charismatic. And I love it when Jessie is giving her speech. The camera purposefully shows people they could not be less interested.
Yeah.
They're, sipping their sodas and they're not listening. And Zach gets up there and people are cheering and lifting him up on their shoulders. And
Yeah.
Wait,
so,
do you really think Zach won?
Oh, in the episode?
Yeah.
No, I can't remember.
Okay.
No,
but
he didn't
yeah,
win.
he didn't win in the end.
No. I meant who do you think won the speech?
Oh, he was way more convincing.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
in my
he
mind, he
was.
totally
Okay.
won. Yeah.
Because I thought it was a joke. I was like, I know everybody's gonna say Jesse won, but
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna say Zach won. And I was trying to think of good reasons. It was governmental overreach, like what to put in the vending machines and stuff. And I was like, clearly he's just. But I know too much of Zach's character, and I'm like, when I saw that clip again, I'm like, clearly he's just being him.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And plus, your comment yesterday kind of ruined it. With the maybe he lost because he was trying to put pizza in vending machines.
I mean,
Not a bad idea. I mean, if I go into a place and there's pizza in a vending machine, I'm going to buy one.
well, of course you are. You get big bites
going
from
to-
7-Eleven.
I'm going to buy a couple slices of that
I
pizza.
love it. Oh my gosh. Well, I think too, it's all about perspective, right? Because what your heartstrings get tugged with. I was like, Jesse was talking about artificial ingredients. This is so ahead of its time.
Right?
Yeah, that would definitely be you.
Yeah. I was like, she
Today.
just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Which I think was such a perfect illustration that you had for us
Yes.
because it shows it really just depends on what's going on in your heart and how easily it is for us to get drug into the hype of the moment
Yeah.
and what a candidate might be saying to us. Yeah, based on what we've experienced.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you started off with this analogy kind of painting what a stump speech was for us. And then we got into Colossians, which is the book we're studying throughout this series. And in Colossians, you made that analogy that it was this second part of the first chapter was Paul's stump speech. This is the thing that he wanted to resonate, the message that he wanted to resonate as he was sharing the message of Jesus with this church in Colossae.
Yes.
Trying to get all the words right. So I'm curious. I have some questions for y'all. Okay. What are some of the slogans that you guys have made decisions on without even hearing the full stump speech?
Oh,
Wow. Yeah.
That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, what are some of the slogans that we have made decisions on without hearing the full stump speech? So if you were one of these folks in the Church of Colossians and you were like, I'm not even listening to everything Paul's saying, I'm just going to run with this piece.
That one part right there really
That
stuck
one
out to me.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I can kick it off because I didn't give you this question ahead of time, but we went over this in the Polarizing series, actually. It was like a big moment for me to open my eyes when we talked about some of the fertility conversations. I had developed thoughts and feelings based on just the small things I was hearing. And as I got more into the intricacies of it, I just felt like Jesus was shaping my heart and my thoughts and my prayers and opening up my heart to a deeper understanding and empathy for people on all sides. But that was a space where I really had heard the highlights of, this is what people say about pro-life and pro-choice and this and that. And I just ran with it and didn't even have the whole speech from anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I have two examples. One is I think an example of like good advertising, and the other one's like a bit more spiritual. So like Chick-fil-A's phrase, eat more chicken. It's so clever and it's so good. And when I go to a place and get a burger, I always think, well, this isn't Chick-fil-A. And like that just stands out to me. Like it's such a quick phrase. Yeah. And it's something I think about whenever I go buy a sandwich. It's crazy. It's so good. It's so clever. But I think it shows you like what works in that. Like they have a really good product and they advertise it well, and they don't need to advertise it all that much. Just as one little easy thing, like less is more in that sense, right? But it stands out, and it kind of like, it defends itself. I think a lot of times when we read things in the Bible, it might seem like too easy. It might seem like very simple and all that, but it stays with us, and we think about it, and it changes the way that we interact with things in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's a good example of advertising, but you see things like that in the gospel all the time.
Yeah.
Like love your enemies. That's like, it's like quick and concise, and it's everything you need to know about this thing, but it's so difficult to do. And you can think about that and like fail at it so often, but always try to get better at it. And it's something I think about all the time as well. Hopefully I think about love your enemies more than eat more chicken.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. But I love how like a lot of Jesus' sayings are like really quick and memorable. Andy Stanley would say they're sticky statements, right?
Yeah.
And they stay with you.
Yeah.
And they change the way that you interact with things in your world.
Yeah.
I think maybe another one that comes to mind, and this is like a hot button thing, but one of the, like a phrase that then also is an organization, but would be like the Black Lives Matter thing, right?
Yeah.
So that was something that particularly in 2020, like really got a lot of attention because it's the organization. But then there was also the argument that's just like, but Black lives do matter. So there, when you like tease that out a little bit, it's like we can separate this organization and maybe what the organization stands for, and that you might not want to be tied to that organization and all the things that stands for, but also acknowledge that Black lives do matter. And we can stand behind that phrase. So maybe that's kind of what you're asking about too, Rochelle. So like also with like a pro-life thing, and like we can expand that phrasing from maybe what that is as a phrase and an organizational standpoint to being like we can be for life and not just what maybe an organization has put behind that. So those kinds of things. When you just boil it down to like someone's stump speech, but then like tease something out a little bit beyond that. Gets a little more interesting.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I don't even want to give my example now.
No, what was yours?
Mine, if you know me, mine's clearly going to be about food. And the best kind of gimmick I thought of was...
Gimmick, that's a good
gimmick.
word.
Okay, that's
the best
good.
kind of gimmick I thought of was Subway, Eat Fresh. Right? They had Jared and everybody behind it, like all this stuff.
Can we talk about
and
Jared?
I'm like,
Jared's been canceled.
that's all right. Right.
I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. We don't need, that's a whole nother podcast. But I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, man, every time I chose to eat Subway, I did think it was much better than what I could have chose to eat. And if you really think about it, fell for it. Because the only thing fresh in there, they bake the bread. Nothing else is really fresh in there.
It's all like frozen meat and stuff.
Sorry, Subway, if you're listening, but I still like Subway.
I'm sure Subway's
it doesn't stop me from going
to
there.
our podcast. Right.
Yes. Yeah. I think that was a great example. I love that all these examples, they point out just that idea of if someone's going to say what would be their life slogan, like what would it be? And one of the things I love about this example of Paul is that his really changed over the course of his life because of his encounter with Jesus, who holds it all together. I'm getting ahead of myself. So you guys, Heather, could you speak a little more to maybe what the stump speech of Paul was and then where he is now when he's having this conversation? Yeah.
Well, I mean, before Paul's encounter with Jesus, he was totally against Jesus. But he was actually persecuting Christians. So he was taking down the church. He was trying to dismantle. He was, trying to disrupt anything that had to do with Christianity. So, his whole world flipped upside down. And then he met Jesus. And this became everything that he stood for. And you can read all about his encounter with Jesus in Acts. And it's powerful. And it totally changed everything about him. And it became it became his core to who he was until the end of his life. And it really was his stump speech. I mean, it was foundational to every conversation he had, whether it was in the masses, like in the public square, like in Athens, or it was one-on-one conversations and mentoring relationships, or to churches that he was a part of starting and, staying in contact with, and through these letters that we get to read to this day. Yeah. So that's the central theme in everything that he did.
Yeah.
I have a couple thoughts on the stump speech. First, imagine Paul trying to give this stump speech with his past.
Right?
I mean, think about it. Like we watch these, like even in a debate, like a moderator, you're answering a question. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, we have a quote here from you from 1983 where you said, like, you can't change your mind or change your stance on almost anything without. Yeah, and the second thing I wanted to say was I was really thinking about it last night after listening to Heather's message. I think that's what I don't like a big thing that I don't like about politics today in today's world. Like, let's bring back a true stump speech. Like, I wouldn't mind it. I started thinking about the commercials that we see now. Like, even 15, 20 years ago, those commercials, as bad as they are, they still felt like you were getting some information about what this person stood for or what they were going to try and do. And now it's just become the opposite. Like, there's no... It doesn't even define a stump speech anymore. They're just out to get one another and everything like that. Like, let's go back to some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. And I love what you said about Paul changing, because it is like you see him struggling with that. Like as he meets new people, they're like, aren't you the guy that was killing Christians last week?
Yeah.
And that would have been so difficult for him to like overcome. I think it shows like Paul's like resilience. He was a really dedicated guy, and it seems like he was able to take all of that and keep going. I try to put myself in his shoes. Would I have the strength to work through that kind of like, I don't know, doubt and like just people seeming like they don't really trust what you're saying up front? Like that would be really tough to work through. Yeah. But I think he was so committed and he was so passionate and zealous for Jesus at that point. He was like, I don't care what you guys are going to say about me. Like I know my calling now. And he was so quick to be able to move on past his past mistakes and find true healing in Jesus. And I really, really like that about Paul. Yeah. It's something I'm always thinking about in my own life, trying to do that better.
Yeah.
I think it also part of his ministry was to the Jew. So, you have to think you're talking about like a group of people who were also kind of in the same mindset that he was coming from. So they were a people that had to wrestle with the same things that he had been wrestling with as far as like the teachings that they grew up with and understanding, kind of dealing with this guy who was claiming to be the Messiah that they had been taught about for so long, and understanding like, okay, were his claims to be the Messiah true? And, so he had like a kinship there with them. So there was that side of things. Then you had people that he probably was a part of, like killing their family members, or so there was like some forgiveness and stuff that he had to probably seek out, and then they had to extend grace to him, and to like all of that had to be worked through. Like when you start thinking about some of these types of interactions that we don't have captured like in scripture, like that's the kind of stuff that I just think is like so incredible
Yeah.
that happened, you know, in his life and things like that. And then you have like the Gentiles that he was reaching that had like no parts of that stuff
Yeah.
that he was able to have like a whole different approach to in his ministry that the Lord opened up to him, like but could have a unique insight to like their whole world, that because of his past he could relate to them in a unique way. Like the Lord just opened up so much to him because of that. It's just incredible.
I love that. Yeah, I love that you guys kind of have painted what the chaos in his own life would have been.
Yes.
And how when he had that encounter with Jesus, he's speaking from a place of, I've walked this, I've lived that, when he gets to the church at Colossae. So could you just tell us a little bit more about what did the chaos look like that Paul was coming into, that he was speaking into?
Yeah, I mean, some of the division that was that he heard. So he's in prison when he wrote this letter. So he heard about the division that was happening in this church, and the division that was happening was that there was starting to be arguments among the people around really the deity of Christ, and so they were. Some people were starting to worship other gods. They were starting to be pulled into other religious rituals. They were starting to participate in idol worship and, just kind of exploring some false teachings, which was very prevalent. I mean, that was just happening in their culture. And so, you know, they'd probably gather for worship gatherings like we do together. And then they'd go out and do their lives. And as they were doing that, they would hear about other things and other religious, ideas and stuff. And so they'd start being like, oh yeah, well, we worship Jesus, but they're also doing this other thing over here. And so they'd start running those things in parallel. Like we see that in our culture today.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, not calling any one person out, but you'll see it on social media a lot. Like we have a lot of people that like come to Believers, and so they're, you'll see them posting stuff that we do on Sunday morning and stuff, and then they're also posting like a great quote from Buddha or a great quote from like whoever else they're like following, and they're like, that's just so like, just imagine that kind of stuff. It's like that kind of stuff that was happening. And so Paul's just like starting to call some of that stuff out. Like, you can't worship Jesus as God and also celebrate like Buddha. Like that's not how this works.
Do you think there was any cultural entrapment as well, or was it strictly religious that they were falling into this?
Oh, I'm sure it was both.
Because I'm just like, how relatable, I think Jamie mentioned it the week before last, like how relatable is it for an election too, because like the rally feels like this and the stump speech feels like this, and like you start to piece these together, like, man, am I idolizing too much? So I wonder if they were going through a bit of that too.
I think it's so difficult. Like, just imagine being so entrenched in either like a really Jewish culture or Gentile culture, and then you hear about Jesus and you realize like, I got to let go of all of these things. Like, that would have been a process. And then you have people stepping in after Paul, and they're like, hey, I know this one guy said this stuff, but like, really, you got to become Jewish to be a Christian. And they're like adding all those other things now. Like, it would have been really confusing. So I think Paul writes it from a place of compassion, knowing like, man, culture is so ingrained in who you are. Like, focus on Jesus, let him be the king and follow his teaching. So I think culture and all of those other teachings were so entrenched in who they were. It was really tough to let go of.
And that idea, that there was chaos then, and it continues now. Like, we're seeing the same parallels. You talked about it's because of the law of thermodynamics.
Yeah, the second law of thermodynamics.
Very fun.
Yeah, which I was like, I can't, have this conversation and not talk about your science facts with Doug because
Oh, yeah. So I was sitting next to them worshiping, and you started talking about science. I'm like, oh, we got to talk about some science stuff. This is going to be great.
Good. Y'all can talk about it because that's about the
Yes.
extent of my knowledge.
That's very
I
fun.
love it. I just
Yeah.
don't. It doesn't lock in. Is
Yes.
what happens with me.
Yeah,
I love
same.
talking about it.
Yeah, same. But yeah, I loved that concept because God, created us. And so that law within us for all matter to tend towards chaos, and how that shows our need and dependence on God is just, I thought that was a really cool science highlight. I am a nerd about how like science and history reflects the same message of Jesus
Right.
that I see throughout scripture. Yeah. So that's really cool. As we get to the modern version of that, we start to look at our own testimonies and testimonies of those in our community. And we got to hear a powerful testimony yesterday from Quincy. It was so good. So I would just love to hear some of those takeaways and insights that you experienced from her sharing.
Yeah, I didn't know Quincy's story. So hearing it, man, my heart broke.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
so many ways. Like hearing her boldness and sharing how she was just dealing with cutting and even just like suicidal thoughts and, trying to even act on that, man. Just like, I don't know. I was just like listening, and it's like really just filled with compassion and sorrow.
Yeah.
And my heart broke for her.
Yeah.
To know that she has struggled through that. And and to know the importance of that community and to hear how, Heather, you were able to be there for her in a time of like extreme need is such an amazing example of like what true community needs to look like. So if there's anybody, even like listening now, who finds themselves in a place where there's nobody who's willing to listen, like reach out and talk to somebody. Like always have somebody that's there for you. And to know that we're there for you too, if there's anything we can do to help. I just kept thinking that, like, thank God for the church.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank God for the church and people who are willing to be there for others.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I thought the same walking this morning, like you said, beautiful morning. So I went out there and walked and was listening to it again. And that, it just brought me to tears on the trail. It's such a heartbreaking story. I'm so thankful that she was willing to share it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I couldn't help but think the same thing. Like we preach that a lot through small groups, through impact teams. Like, and here's just another example of the importance of community
Yeah.
within your faith, because I think she wrestled with a time where she knew the answer, and it just wasn't clicking. Like it wasn't being fixed in her life, and so for her to start attending church and then have this moment where somebody like Heather could be there for her, like such a beautiful part of her testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was so brave too, like the bravery that it takes to expose these really vulnerable parts of yourself. And I know one of the things that she talked about was even there's a long period of not saying anything about anything, and then just being brave enough to like take that chance and say yes to like all the pokes that God is giving, like, hey, I have a plan for you. Her story really reminded me of David in the Psalms and just like his raw vulnerability. And, we can think of him as like this hero who, slayed the giant and all this, and then he became the king and all that stuff. But when you look through the Psalms, he was like struggling with some things emotionally. And I think David's story, like that's a book we often point people to as they're coming into this journey with Jesus. David's story and Quincy's story, it gives permission for others to be vulnerable about their stories. And then it starts this beautiful cycle of healing, of like people walking into relationship with Jesus. I love how he designed us to do that together. So I'd love to talk about some of the ways that we can encourage folks to find a clear time and that courage to share their testimonies. Like, how do we do that? Because Quincy wasn't shouting this from a rooftop
Right.
6 months ago, but like was able to walk into that. How do we encourage others in sharing their journey?
Yeah, so that question that is very close to my heart. I always thinking about what the Bible says about how we are to use our trials and tribulations, the tough seasons we go through, as a way to help others that are going through these struggles. And I think that helps us answer a bit when you're on the other side of some of this stuff, and then you're able to speak into somebody else's life that is going through something like that. I think it starts to really answer that age-old question where, why would God allow this to happen to me?
Yeah.
Or why would a God as good as our God allow this to happen to you? Well, wait and see. You know, and I would just say this too, that a bit of advice I got in that is, don't rush to your testimony either. Make sure your testimony is finished. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and it's a great bit of advice to think that when you go through something and you come out on the other end, like, God can still be teaching you some stuff, and you can still be learning about what you went through. So I think you saw that in her testimony yesterday. Not only has she gone through it and she's been through it, I think you could see what she's learned through it and how she was helped through it, and now how she feels like maybe she can help others through it. And that's what makes it so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's tough to do, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a group that meets after second service called Coffee with Jesus. It's a high school group, and we just do a Bible study and we talk about the message. And it was weird. So we're at Gather Coffee House, and we're all kind of together. And I was like, hey, everybody, I'm treating coffee today. Every once in a while, we'll buy coffee for everybody. So we're buying coffee, and a couple students were like, nah, don't buy my coffee. I was like, well, why? And they said, because I hate it when somebody helps. They said, I got my own money. I can buy my own coffee. And they weren't saying it to be rude.
Yeah.
It was just something inside of us says, like, I don't want help. I don't need help. I can buy my own coffee. And that was a cup of coffee. But I think we do the same thing with other emotions that are really difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
I got this. I can handle this on my own. I don't need help, because it's really tough to talk about.
Yeah.
And for the cup of coffee, I kind of shared with them. I was like, well, you saying no is taking away an opportunity for me to be generous. So don't say no to a cup of coffee. And for something like this too, if you're struggling and you kind of keep it to yourself, it's almost like you're taking away from somebody else's opportunity to help. Like, Heather, I know that this moment in your life helping was probably like faith building for you as well. So like, if I keep it to myself and I don't let somebody carry my burden as well, then I'm not letting somebody else follow the law of Christ. It says, like Paul says, share each other's burdens, and in doing that, we obey the law of Christ.
Yeah.
So like, we're taking away from somebody else's opportunity for community and to build their faith as well. So as difficult as it might be, man, it's so important just to be real and honest with each other so that we can serve each other. And in doing that, we all grow in our faith and we all grow stronger. And it's a sense of, true iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
If it's a cup of coffee or if it's having a really difficult conversation with something happening in your life. So just the importance of being open and honest.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I think I might have shared this on here before, but years ago, Nate and I were in a really tough spot financially. Like, it was rough. And there was a member of Believers who, I don't even know that they really knew what was going on, but it was during a Sunday morning service, and we were during praise and worship time, and we were in the middle of a song, and she came up to me and put a wad of cash in my hand, like a lot of money in my hand. And I didn't really know what was happening, because I was like eyes closed. I was like worshiping, and I looked down and I was like, oh no, I don't want this. You can give this to somebody else. And she's like huge mama bear to me. And she was like, no, we're giving this to you. And we know that you need it, and we're giving this to you. Wow. And I was like, no, I don't want it. I don't. Yeah. So we're fighting in church. And this is over at Peak Trail. It's like, I don't want it. We don't want it. We don't need it. Give it to somebody else. And she was like, got right in my face, and she said, if you don't take it, then you are causing me to be disobedient.
Yo, that's good.
And I was like,
Mic drop.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Wow.
And she said, don't ever stop what God is asking someone else to do. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, ma'am. So then she just walked away. We've never talked about it since. But that was like a transformational moment for me. I mean, I'm sure it was for her too, but for me, for what you're saying, Doug, like to that whole point, like it grows someone's generosity for sure, but it's also like just, like God is calling other people to obedience in different things. And when we say no to people, we're not just saying no to the person, like we're saying no to God's calling them to be obedient to him.
That's good.
Yeah.
So that has like stuck with me for years. And so like, when God's calling me to like show up for somebody, like I'm not just showing up for the person, like I'm saying yes to God too.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's something that it's this whole like doing church, doing like following Jesus thing. It's like, it's a communal experience
Absolutely.
that we're participating in.
Yeah.
And so when we are the chaos that we're in, but also like the healing and the reconciliation, we get to do this whole thing together. None of it is individual. And that's by design from the very beginning.
Yeah.
That was his design, was for us to be with him and with others from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to like the reading too in John with the woman at the well. Like if Jesus would have went to her and said like, hey, what's up? Let's have this conversation. She would have said, I'm good.
Yeah.
See you later. Like think about what would not have happened after that.
Right.
That whole paragraph, or that whole story is Jesus hanging out there, and a lot of the Samaritans become believers.
Yeah.
And that's incredible.
Right.
Because a woman was willing to be honest and open and talk about life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's easier for us to tell each other no. But if Jesus were like offering me a cup of coffee, would I be like Peter and say like, don't wash my feet, let me wash your feet?
Yeah.
Like, I think that, that's something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
These are such amazing examples of all of the different ways we can allow Jesus to hold everything together. We do have to give that yes. One of the things that I thought about too in that testimony yesterday was in all of our testimonies that letting Jesus hold it together is saying yes to when he puts it on someone's heart to give us the money, maybe reaching out and finding therapy that we can get help in therapy. I know some folks are having like medication, like that's a part of some people's healing journey. Jesus works through our B groups, our community. There's so many different ways that we can say, yes, I trust that you've got this and you're holding it together. But we do have to have, take that leap of faith and say, I want the help. I want to get better. I want to feel the way that God intended me to feel, which is healthy and whole so that I can share my story with others. And when we do that, I think that's a great step to what happens in this next part of Colossians that you talked about yesterday. And that is making Jesus number one, making him king of our lives. So what does that look like? What does that mean to have Jesus number one in our hearts?
To me, easier said than done, but it means, Heather talked about this quite a bit yesterday. It means it's surrender. It's surrender to the Spirit.
Yeah.
That's what it means to make Jesus number one. And I love the vulnerability, Heather, of you up there as like almost like we can't say this, right? The pastor's up there saying that not every moment of her life she's surrendering to God. But it is so true, right? But the more we have moments like this, and the more we hear testimonies like that, and it gets us more in the mode where we are surrendering 100%, and that's how we make him number one.
Yeah.
Going back to the Zach Morris speech, I think Zach Morris was so charismatic and convincing.
Yeah.
I think it's easy for me to listen to those moments. And Zach Morris is not Jesus. Not even close. But the things of the world is so very convincing. And they sound really good. Like pizza in a vending machine sounds good, but I know it's probably not best for me, right? And put that in any situation in life. And I think that's the big thing for me. It's just not listening to what's exciting and what's easy and what's convenient instead of listening to the small, narrow path. And just to trust that when I choose that, Jesus will be there with me. That it's going to be really tough, but it's going to be best.
Yeah.
And just that reminder, I think it's really important.
That's so good. I think about prayer too. It's like that link between us in this physical world and our life with Jesus. I don't know why, but yesterday it stood out to me so much when Heather prayed before we dug into the message. It was like saying, hey, we're talking about this hard stuff, but just as what we're going to talk about gives us the guidance to put Jesus at the center of it and get in that fine-tuned communication with him, then that's how we're going to be led by him. And I think that that's just like such a great way to make him number one as we're tackling all of these things in this chaotic world is, am I elevating communicating with him and not necessarily like sitting in my quiet space all day long where he wants us to be out there engaged in life, but am I saying like, oh, I have this feeling in me when my toddler did this thing, like am I talking to Jesus about it before I react? Or I am going into the polls today, am I praying with Jesus before I go in that booth? Like those sort of things. I think that helps us to make him number one to say in all of it. Let me check in with you first. Like you my ride or die, Jesus.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And he did die for us.
Yeah.
He's the
I think
original
that's the thing that I just
original writer.
I think that's the thing that I find more and more is that I'm more aware of how often I'm just like, am I actually first, or am I following, or am I taking that lead spot?
Yeah.
Because like I know I want to be following. I say I'm a follower. I say I'm following. But am I following, or am I trying to take the lead? And I mean, I know some of it is like my personality. Like I like to just be lead. I like to be the lead. So I have to be like, am I praying about this ahead of time or after? Am I doing this first or second? And so if that's like, if I can like answer that honestly, then like that's where I have to just be constantly like having this check-in.
Yeah.
Like I'm checking in with Jesus. Like, am I checking in with you first or second?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a good...
But you also do a great job
litmus test of that.
leading by teaching that to us. Like we've had moments of that. Like I thought the same thing, Rochelle. Like when she stopped to pray, I was like, this is like the second or third time I've seen her do this. Like just stop in the moment and pray. And I think that's a huge step to this surrender and to recognize the need to surrender. Is to start that conversation with them. Like Heather dropped everything we were doing, like a very practical issue we were trying to work through, like as a staff, and just stopped it all, and we stopped and prayed. And like this earthly mindset of like, wait, we have stuff to do. No, we're going to stop and pray. So like even when you don't think that it's that you might be leading, like leading can be teaching too. And it's great.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes. Well, I have so enjoyed this
was a great
conversation with you guys.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for today, folks. But we invite all of you guys to make plans to be with us this Sunday. We have identical services at 9 and 10:45. And please invite someone to come sit with you and just be transformed as we're going through this series, Divided We Stand, and digging into the book of Colossians. And you know what? We got some work to do. Now we got to go be love. So let's do it. We'll see y'all next time.